Namaste and welcome to the Transformation Immersions mega series. I'm your host Sonal Singhal, a holistic healer and a transformational coach. Through this series, I'm on my unique mission of contributing to the wellness of people all over the world. I'm very happy to introduce and welcome Dr. Loretta Ferrucci in today's talk. Dr. Loretta is an experienced homeopath and has integrated her knowledge of homeopathy with many other fields such as nutrition, traditional Chinese medicine, Jinshin Jutsu, the human pin code, the DeMartini method, etc., and created a system to remove obstacles to healing. Dr. Loretta is on her unique mission of empowering true wellness through education. So I welcome you again, Dr. Loretta, to the Transformation Immersion. I noted that you have practiced for over 20 years as a homeopath, and now you are working exclusively with the mind-body connection and energy medicine. I wonder what motivated you for this huge transition.
It's interesting. So my homeopathic practice was very much a one-to-one kind of practice, obviously, one patient at a time. And when I qualified, I was about 24 years old, and I was really overwhelmed by the idea of having to help people. So I studied all these different modalities, and that's what really got me interested into energy medicine, because homeopathy is also a form of energy medicine, of course. And working with people one-to-one for years was sort of gave me a foundation. But then I actually moved into teaching groups, because I thought, well, if I could tell a group of my patients how to eat, for example, then I wouldn't have to repeat myself so often in my consults. And then I really got interested in the mind-body connection and trying to uncover the underlying causes behind disease. So what I found was people who go and see a practitioner that expect medication, it's almost like they have an expectation that the medication is going to do the job. And even though homeopathic medicine does work very well for that, there are limitations to that. And so because my practice wasn't really geared to the coaching part, shall we say, I just found myself naturally making that transition. And so with the energy medicine, I don't really practice the energy medicine, but I teach people energy medicine techniques that they can practice on themselves.
So being a homeopath, what are the limitations that you noted?
That's an interesting question. So I suppose the limitations in any form of complementary medicine is that if people are looking for a quick fix, it very often isn't as quick as they'd like. So, you can't give them a pain medication that will just take the pain away. For example, you have to address the cause of what's going on, and that sometimes takes longer. So that can be a limitation for some. In South Africa, we're in the unique position where we have a large part of our population has HIV, is HIV positive, or has HIV AIDS, or has TB. And even though we can supplement those treatments, those patients have to be on conventional medication, obviously, right? And so we are limited in terms of the fact that we can't prescribe those, but we can actually then work with patients who've had the allopathic medication prescribed for them. So I suppose, that's probably the only limitation that I think we can use it. And obviously for things like emergency medicine, if you've been in a motor car accident and you need surgery because your spleen is ruptured, there isn't a remedy that's going to fix that. So other than for sort of real emergency medicine or extreme cases like a bacterial meningitis, for example, where you're really concerned that, it's a very young child, I would always recommend that they have the antibiotics and then have the homeopathy as an adjunct. But really for most chronic diseases, and especially for chronic conditions that are not well treated with allopathic medicine, homeopathy has an amazing scope.
Okay, so now I want to ask you, because you practice both energy medicine. I agree that homeopathy is kind of energy medicine, but I think there are some certain other modalities that you are practicing. So if you compare homeopathy with other modalities, what do you say?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer, because I've never used only one or the other. So I had an interesting patient. I had one patient once who came to see me a couple of years ago. I'd never seen him before. He was a new patient, and he said to me that his whole family believed in homeopathic medicine, but he thought it was a lot of nonsense. But he had acupuncture when he lived in abroad, and he heard that I did something similar, which was the Jinshin Jutsu. So Jinshin Jutsu is a traditional Japanese system of energy medicine, but instead of using needles, we use our hands, okay? And he said to me, so I've heard you do this thing, and I don't want any medicine. I only want that thing. So I said, well, okay, that's not really how I work. I usually use both. But if you want only the energy medicine, we're going to have to work every day. And I don't know for how long that's going to have to. And he said to me, I don't care. I don't care how long it takes, and I don't care how much it costs. And so he was the only patient, probably after about 15 years of being in practice, where I only used energy medicine and lifestyle. I did change his lifestyle. So we changed his diet, okay? He was happy to do that. And he had an autoimmune disease that was very difficult to diagnose, and in actual fact had been sort of given up by the medical fraternity. And he had a treatment every day of the week for 6 weeks, and then 3 times a week for probably another month, and then twice a week for another month. And after 4 months, he was symptom-free. So could we have done the same with only homeopathy? I think if I had picked the right remedy, yes. The difficulty with homeopathy is it lies in matching the remedy perfectly. And for that, you need a lot of skill, okay? So that comes with years. And so with the energy medicine, you can't really get it wrong. You know, I don't, So he recovered without any medication. So after 4 months, I said to him, oh, for goodness sake, can you please just start taking some vitamins and stuff, because it'll just make this go much faster. But by then he was relatively well. So I've never, other than that, I've never had to choose. I'll be quite honest.
Okay. So I think you have a favorite quote that you mentioned to me by Dr. John DeMartini: the mind lies, the body never does. And that's why God put the clues in the body. Would you mind elaborating on this, as the topic of your talk is also related to this quote?
For sure. So many of us think that disease is, some people think it's punishment. Some people think it's bad luck. Some people think it's bad genes. Some people think it's only poor lifestyle. And very often it's a combination of poor lifestyle. And of course, our genetics have got something to do with it. But the fact of the matter is that disease, as I understand it, and certainly as Dr. John DeMartini teaches it, is that it's a feedback mechanism. It is a feedback mechanism to give you information that you otherwise wouldn't have about something in your life that needs to change. Now, sometimes it literally is you have to change a food. And sometimes it is you have to change a relationship, or you have to change the way you look at the world, or you have to heal a past trauma, or you have to uncover a fear or a belief. Or you have to find out what the disease is allowing you to do that you would ordinarily not be able to do without it, even if it's something that you think you don't like, because all of those things are clues of what's really going on. So our minds will often say, it's genetics. It runs in my family. There's nothing I could have done. That's the lie. And so your body is the only part of you that is ever in the present. You know, I may have weighed 20 kilograms less 10 years ago, but today I don't weigh those 20. I weigh what I weigh today. I feel the way I feel today. Tomorrow, I'm not going to feel like I did today. I'm going to feel like I feel tomorrow. So your body is never in the future, and it's never in the past. And your mind is almost always in the future or in the past. So your body is a constant reflection of what is truly going on. And if we can learn how to interpret what the signals mean, then we can move beyond our ego identity that makes all the excuses for why we have what we have.
So living in present means living in your body, kind of, you know?
Sure. So a lot of people, what I've also noticed, that people who are committed to, I don't know, energetic practice or even spiritual practice, very often they try and move past the body. It's as if the body, you know, it's like the ego. The ego is not like the part of us that's supposedly not good. It's like the body's not important. Well, quite frankly, you wouldn't be having this life if you didn't have the body. So you may be a spiritual being having a human experience, but the vehicle for your experience is your physical body. So when you ignore that, you ignore, it's like you are ignoring an entire language that something is speaking to you that you're just not listening to. And so I think that the body gets a bad rep. And I think that the body is a vehicle that can help us access what's going on in our unconscious minds. And it's the signs and symptoms that make us pay attention. When we feel well, we don't pay attention because it doesn't matter. And as soon as our feeling well is disrupted, whether that's we're fatigued or we've got anxiety or we feel overwhelmed or we have pain, then we start thinking, oh, we've got to fix this. Well, actually, it's less about fixing it and more about discovering what it's trying to tell you and then fixing that. Because the physical body has only got the signs and symptoms because of whatever else is going on.
Very nice. So I see that apart from homeopathy and TCM, you also practice Jin Shin Jutsu. I think you mentioned a little bit about that, and the human pin code and De method for healing your clients. I am not, I'm not familiar with many of these methods, and also I'm sure many of our viewers are also not aware. It would be great if you can shed some light to enlighten us about these methods.
Sure. So when I was a homeopathy student, I happened to, the lecturer who was who was in charge of the clinical students when we were in our senior years, happened to also be a trained acupuncturist. And he taught an acupuncture course outside of our curriculum. And so that was my exposure to traditional Chinese medicine in the form of acupuncture and the theory behind how the diseases work. So when I first started practicing, that's what I did. But I did find that a lot of patients were needle averse, and the system in which we were trained used iron and copper needles because those were the traditional needles, and they needed to be sterilized in a dry sterilizer. And we've got problems because there are diseases that are transmissible, but people are not happy to use needles that have been sterilized and then we used on someone else. So there was a limitation there in how well I could actually, for me, in how well I could apply acupuncture. And then I was invited to a program which was called Jinshin Jitsu, and because I was learning anything I could at the time, I didn't know what it was, but I went anyway. So Jinshin Jitsu is a traditional Japanese, it's a philosophy essentially. It's a universal philosophy which we can apply directly to the body and therefore use it as a healing modality. And its literal translation is the art of the creator through compassionate and knowing man. So Jinshin Jitsu literally is the creator's gift to any person who knows and who cares enough to put their hands on someone to help to heal them. And the philosophy of Jinshin Jitsu and the organ dynamics and interactions is very similar to Chinese medicine. So that was the connection for me. So in Jinshin Jitsu, there are areas in the body where energy becomes dammed or blocked, and they're called safety energy locks. And they call them safety energy locks because they say they lock or block for our safety, because when they're blocked, we have a symptom. And then we pay attention. So it's like a circuit breaker. It's like a switch that stops an electrical circuit from being overloaded. And each safety energy lock has a number, and each number has a meaning. And the meaning of the number and the location of the safety energy lock gives you an idea of what's going on and why that safety energy lock is not working. So our hands, one of the ways in which energy moves through the body, and this is like this in many modalities, is that our hands and our feet, the soles of our feet and the palms of our hands have polarity. They like, one is like a negative pole, the one's like a positive pole. So they are like jumper cables that you can attach to a battery terminal to help to start another car, for example, right? So if one car's battery is flat, you connect the terminals between the two cars, and then you help the other car's battery wake up. And so that's what Jinshin Jitsu does. So, but when Jinshin Jitsu, it's a hands-on therapy. The patient is fully clothed, and it's not pressure. It's not the same as acupressure. It literally is merely holding with your hands onto the two areas, safety energy lock. So for example, there's a safety energy lock here on the forehead, let's just say, and there's another one here on the cheek. So putting your hands on the two of them and then waiting until the energy is established between the two of them. And you can feel that with a pulsation, because a safety energy lock is not a point, it's a vortex of energy. So it spins down to the bone through all the layers of the body, through all the layers of the energy body, back down to the bone. And when it hits the skin, you feel it as a pulsation. So when both of those safety energy locks are pulsing together, they say with a rhythmic, regular energy of the universe, then you've opened that area between those, then it's time to move on to the next one. So always two hands on the body, always very little pressure, really just touching and waiting until that energy has been established between those two. So another part of Jinshin Jitsu that I love is that it is an entire component which is called self-help. So one can teach once, and some of the techniques are very simple, like holding a finger, wrapping your fingers of one hand around another. So you can teach it to children, you can teach it to people who are illiterate, You can teach it to people who don't speak the same language as you do. It's so simple and it's so easy to apply and it's so effective, and it allows the patient to not give their power to the doctor, but take their power themselves. Because even in CAMS medicine, patients often, or even with healers, patients often give their power to the healer. They think the healer is the one with the power, when actually the patient is the one with the innate power. So Jinshin Jyutsu helps the patient work on themselves so that they actually can get their own energy battery recharged.
And what about the human pin code and DeMartini method?
So the human pin code is interesting. It is a system of numerology. So I love numbers, okay? So you can hear the Jinshin Jyutsu is numbers. And then after the Jinshin Jyutsu, I was talking to someone about Jinshin Jyutsu, and she said to me, oh, you know, you like numbers, you like this book. So she gave me a book called The Human Pin Code. So the Human Pin Code is basically a numerological system that was devised by a South African man called Douglas Forbes. And he wrote the book, The Human Pin Code. So it is taking a date of birth. So you can take any day, obviously, a date of birth, and you apply a particular calculation. So it's slightly different to traditional numerology where you take the name and the surname and so on, right? So you apply a calculation and you come up with a spread of 8 numbers. And each number denotes a different aspect or a persona, you know, a different area in which the person is going to show themselves, shall we say. And it's like your behavioral DNA. So, you know, you will only ever have one life map, a pin code. Those 8 numbers, they'll never change because your date of birth is never going to change. But you can learn how to do things that are not in your pin code. But when you are under a huge amount of pressure, you revert to your pin code. So I think of it as like your home language. You always think and dream and are most comfortable speaking your home language. You can learn to speak other languages and you can speak them well. But when you're under huge stress, you will revert to your home language. So the human pin code allows us to get it's like having an astrology chart done, I suppose. It's slightly different. So what I've done is I have added the Jinshin Jyutsu number meanings, because there are more numbers, there are 26 of them, to the work that Douglas Forbes did with the human pin code. And I've amalgamated them. So I call it life mapping, only because it's the human pin code with the Jinshin Jyutsu added. So this helps me when I work with my coaching patients. It allows me to get a handle on really what they will best respond to and how they will best respond. So that allows them to appreciate their uniqueness and their individuality, and it allows me to have a relationship with them in the way in which I coach them, or the tools that I give them that will best suit that human pin code that they have.
Very nice. So I think you have developed your own modality, kind of, you know.
Yes, absolutely.
So, like, for what problems people connect with you now? Because now you are not a traditional homeopath. And and what is your approach in helping them?
So, if I think that patients, so in South Africa, homeopathy is a legislated profession. So we can only see patients if you see them physically and you've examined them. You know, obviously, if you've seen them once or twice and then they're away, you can have a Zoom consult with them. But a new patient needs to be in your rooms. That might change now with this whole COVID and the thing, but for now, that's how it works. So because I work online, I don't prescribe medication to patients any longer. So my special area is working with patients who have already done what I call the right things. They're eating the right food. They're trying to do the right exercise. They maybe have a meditation practice, but they're still stuck. And they're stuck in a chronic disease label. So things like, I don't specialize in any particular kind of disease, but it's those things like autoimmune diseases, you know. A lot of people, they eat the right food, they do the right things, but they can't shake the symptoms. So it's when those physical interventions are not enough. That's where I usually come in and say, okay, well, let's look beyond the physical. All right. So I work on helping them uncover what those unconscious agendas are behind their symptoms. And then I use the tools that I have in my toolbox, the Jinshin Jyutsu, the life mapping, some of the DeMartini method, and some other tools as well, to help them to actually tap into their innate healing potential so that they literally can heal themselves.
So, Doctor, you offer individual and online group coaching programs to uncover and remove the underlying psychosomatic causes of disease.
Mhm.
So, would you mind sharing information on some of these programs that you offer to your clients or to the people
Sure.
looking for?
So at the moment, I have three programs. I have a one-to-one coaching program, which is what I call a bespoke program. So the minimum time for that you can enroll in is for 8 weeks. Some people who've got chronic disorders, we need to go for 12 or 16, but minimum of 8, because we can't do much. I don't believe if we do it for less than that, we can get anywhere.
Mhm.
And it's a bespoke program, so it's not limited to one session a week, for example. It depends really on the individual client. So
Mhm.
each client gets the number of sessions that they require, of whichever modalities they require, because it's very much tailored to that individual client. So
Mhm.
those are my one-to-one coaching packages. Then I have a 6-week program, which is called Thrive, Living Your Best Life. And
Mhm.
so Thrive I designed Thrive so that I could teach people the basic tools that I believe we require for transformation. So of course, my transformation area is health, but quite frankly, you can apply those tools to any area. Transformation tools are universal, aren't they?
Yeah.
Okay, so whether you want to grow your career, or you want to improve your relationships, or you want to make more money, I don't profess to be a coach in any of those areas, but I know that the tools are universal. So that 6-week is a group coaching program. It makes it much more affordable for clients, obviously. And that program consists of a training session every week live with me, and then a question and answer session live with me every week.
Mhm.
And that equips clients with the basic tools and techniques that I believe they need to help them transform. And then in Jinshin Jitsu, there is a particular, it's sort of established by the shall I say, the associations that run Jinshin Jitsu, which is the self-help program. So if you're a qualified Jinshin Jitsu practitioner, as I am, then you are entitled to teach clients the self-help component. And so that's a short course. It's essentially normally 2 days, but I run it over 2 evenings and then a full day, so people can have time to integrate in between. And then I have a 6-month mastermind program, but that's only for people who have already worked with me. So those are my current offerings.
Okay, nice. And then, would you like to share any success stories of your clients?
I wasn't really expecting that question. I suppose I should have, hey? Yes. So I had a client, a patient who came to see me, and in fact, his wife brought him. So, okay, so most of my patients have always been women, right? So 80% women, 20% men, because generally men seem to be more skeptical or whatever, for whatever reason.
Yeah, they are.
And the wife literally dragged the husband through the door. I could see there was trouble coming down the pike the minute they came inside, and he had very, very bad gout. To the extent that he was on a crutch, he couldn't have a shoe on his foot and all the rest. Anyway, he sat down and I would normally not do this on a first consultation, but I went straight into the unconscious agendas behind disease. I could see he had an interesting energy, just from his language. Anyway, so I said to him, until he can find how this disease process is benefiting him and stop resisting it, he cannot get rid of it. So I gave him medication, and I said to him, but your homework is you need to go and find 150 benefits to having this pain. And he left very unhappy. And he came back about 5 days later. His gout was much worse. Left again. So gave him some homeopathics. He left again. And I didn't see him for about 3 weeks. And he came to see me. And he had shoes on. He walked into the office. He sat down. He said, I just want to tell you that I was so angry that first consultation. I thought, what a waste of time and money. This was the biggest waste of money and time in my life. But the gout got so bad that eventually he couldn't get out of bed. He couldn't go to the bathroom, right? Because he couldn't move. And he was so desperate that he thought, oh, well, he thinks he's just going to do what the stupid fruitcake lady told him to do. And he started making the list. And he says by the time he got to 70 or 80, he was in tears. It was not a crying type, because he was so profoundly moved by how he could see what this disease was trying to tell him. And I think he got to 110. And when he woke up the next morning, 70% of his pain was gone.
So he did write all those things.
He did. He brought me the list. He said, and I've come to see you today to thank you and to show you, here's the list, and to show you my foot. And literally, his gout had improved in 24 hours by about 70 or 80%.
I think I'm going to use this technique.
That is a tip from Dr. John DeMartini. That's one of the ways in which he starts. You cannot have pain without pleasure. You cannot have support without challenge. They always go together. So if you've got a symptom that is extremely challenging, you have to look for where is the support. So if you ask yourself, what does it force you to be or do or have? So for example, this man's pain forced him he couldn't work. So he said, there's no benefit to not working. I said, no, rubbish. Of course there's a benefit to not working. What's the benefit to you not working? He goes, yeah, well, I hate my job. Go, so you don't have to go to the job you hate. He said, yeah, I don't have to go to the job I hate. I said, and who does your wife just leave you to lie in the bed? He goes, no. My wife brings me breakfast and lunch and supper, and she cares for me, and she brings me my medication. I said, she normally do that? He goes, no, she doesn't normally do that. I said, so is that a benefit? He went, yes, but it doesn't mean I want it. I said, that's not the point. It's not about whether you want that benefit. Is it there? Because the minute you can see that you are not only paying a price for nothing. You see, when we've got symptoms and we don't see how they serve us, it's like we go to a store, we take $10,000, we put it on the counter, we walk out, they take our money, we have nothing. So when we get out, we go, this is not fair. They've robbed me. But when you go into a store and there's an item that you want that you think is worth $15,000 and you give them $10,000, you walk out, you go, oh, I got a bargain. Okay. So you feel completely different. So it's the same with disease. When you find out, the first thing you have to find is how is it serving you? That's not necessarily going to fix it, but how is it serving you is going to is going to show you how it's giving you what you want in a way that you don't think you can get any other way. So like this man had to go to work, right? And he felt like he had to work. But when he was really sick, he didn't have to work. And it wasn't because he was lazy. It was because he was really sick. So that's how the unconscious works. Okay. So yeah, it works if you work it.
I will try. I'm sure it will work. Because I'm already asking so many questions to one of my clients, and I think I am doing good job there. So, doctor, how can one avoid getting sick and be energetic at the same time? And is it achievable?
Oh, I think it's absolutely 100% achievable. I don't even think it's just achievable. I think it's our birthright. I think it is every single human's birthright that we have high energy and good health. Doesn't mean we stay healthy all the time. It doesn't also mean that we don't get sick. It just means that when we get sick, we are able to get better. All right. So we can build resilience. So I think the way in which we build resilience the most is when we live in alignment with what is truly important to us and not with what the world is telling us needs to be important to us. That's difficult. That sounds lovely. In theory, it sounds amazing, okay? In practice, it's very difficult for many, many people. So when we live in alignment with who we really are, and when we can integrate the parts that we don't like and the parts that we do like fully, and we can stop the criticism of ourselves, and we can stop, therefore, the criticism and the judgment of others, because you can't stop it outside if you don't stop it inside. And if we look after our energy body, so practices like yoga or meditation or qigong or Jinshin Jitsu is mine, okay? Or it doesn't matter, prayer. It doesn't matter which one you choose. It's choose a daily practice that feeds and replenishes your energy. Because our minds are so connected to, this one did this and my mother didn't love me enough and why don't I have more money than that one? And it's not fair and that depletes our energy. And when we have tools and techniques that help to bring our energy back, well, then we have the unlimited energy source that we can draw on every day. But we have to do the work, so if you don't go to your job and you don't work, you don't get paid, right? There's no such thing as an easy buck, I don't think. So it's the same with health. We have to be prepared to put in some effort so that we can reap the reward. But yes, I think that we can all have optimal health. Do you think so?
I feel from this talk, I understand that body is very important, It's more important than our mind, Don't listen to your mind, you listen to your body. You talk to your body, be in love with your body, and I think your life will be more easy than anybody can think
Absolutely.
of. Yeah.
what I always find so interesting is that people go, oh, the body's not important, but we have to practice mindfulness and we have to meditate. Now, I'm not knocking that. I think that that's very valid. But you know what? If you can't even regulate your physical body, how do you think you can regulate your mind?
Yes.
I mean, come on,
Yeah.
So I think the body is like the temple of the soul or the vehicle of the soul. I believe the body is the doorway into the mind, and I would go as far as to say even the soul.
Yeah, that's true. I feel also the same way. So thank you, doctor, for joining us and introducing us to various alternative healing options and whatever the work you are doing. And I feel many people are watching this series and taking benefits of this valuable free resource to make their lives better. And Dr. Loretta is giving us, I think, 2 freebies. And would you like to tell us about that?
Well, they're 2 items, but they're sort of they're sort of one. Okay, so okay. I put together a guided meditation, suppose visualization, to help balance the 7 primary chakras. And in that guided meditation, we go into the color, the location, the gland, the nerve plexus, and the organs, as well as the mind-body connection that is governed by that chakra. And then, because I like to know, I created a little booklet that has the information about the chakras in it. So I just want to say, disclaimer, I'm not a chakra expert, but it's part of the energy body. And so this is an offering of mine, in as much as I know that is easy to do. You just listen to the CD. And if you're interested, you read the booklet if you want to look something up. So that is my gift to the listeners of this particular episode.
Thank you again. And thank you to the people, whoever is watching this series. And please share the link to subscribe with your family and friends. And this way you can add value to their lives too. And do let us know what you learned from today's talk by commenting on my Facebook group, Body, Mind and Soul Healing. Stay in communion with your body by listening to it, and stay connected virtually. Bye.